Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Fallout Experiment, and a formal apology for how long it's been. We'll get that out of the way right now for any of those of you who follow my videos and have been wondering why there haven't been so many. It's because school just recently started, so I'm busy a lot more now and won't be able to post every day, but I'll try and keep getting at least one video out a week. Anyway, what we're here to talk about today is Star Trek Into Darkness, which I just recently saw, and I really liked this movie. It was really good, but before we get really into this review, I want to make one thing very clear, and that is, I'm giving this review as somebody who just recently got into the Star Trek series. So if I'm wrong about anything involving the series, I'll try not to say too much about it because of that. But if I'm wrong about anything involving the series, please cut me some slack because, like I said, I'm very new to that. This is more a review of somebody who is just reviewing it as a movie with some basic knowledge of the series. Now, with all those things out of the way, let's get right into this. Star Trek Into Darkness was really good, and I liked it more than the first Star Trek movie that director J.J. Abrams came out with. Now, there are a few reasons for that. With the other Star Trek, I felt like they tried to do a lot in it, and I know a lot of fans had this whole issue of, because it's it's supposed to be a reboot, and some fans, from what I understand, had an issue with the fact that it's a reboot. Completely denies the series, and so it's not really, it ignores the series in a way, because when you reboot something, that's usually what happens. It kind of is saying that over there didn't happen. So I can understand that, because it contradicts a lot of things. But other than that, though, it was a really good action movie, and despite there being issues with plot holes involving the series and continuity issues as well, it was still really good. And the only real problem I had with the first Star Trek movie here is that they come out of nowhere with this whole thing about it being an alternate universe, and they don't really explain that very well, because I'm not even sure a lot of people know that's supposed to be true, because the fact that older Spock is in this universe, at the end he makes a kind of an offhand comment to younger Spock about the world being, this new world being an alternate universe, and we'll get to why that kind of bugs me in a minute, but yeah, that's a big thing. That's a thing in this movie. So I think that's kind of the way they're going with. This is a reboot, but it's also an alternate universe, so don't hate us. But they don't really establish that very well. And Star Trek Into Darkness, we're going to get my complaints right out of the way right now. Star Trek Into Darkness has that same issue where they don't establish a couple of things very well. Star Trek Into Darkness involves Khan, who was played by Benedict Cumberbatch. For some of you, probably a lot of you actually, will know as Sherlock from Stephen Moffat's Sherlock show series, and is also playing the Necromancer in the Hobbit movies, but he hasn't really shown up in those. But anyway, so that's basically where you would know him from, if you know him at all. But he plays Khan, and he does an excellent job. He really sells his role, and I love it, and I think he's a fantastic villain. Now, this movie involves a lot of Kirk being like the rough and tumble captain that we all know and love, and how he needs to be humbled, basically, because he ends up losing his ship right in the beginning for interfering with a planet, which is not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to just observe, and because he interferes with that planet, they take away his captain status and give the ship back to the guy to this other guy who asked him to enroll in Starfleet in the first place, and he has a problem saying the rules aren't for me, that kind of thing. Basically, your everyday like, I haven't lost any crewmen, thing. So that's kind of in this movie. They don't really go too overboard with it, but it is something that you can see Kirk has an issue with at points, and that's fine. It's good that they have that in there because it was necessary for it to be in there. Because I think that made Kirk's choices seem a little more interesting. Well, not interesting, but seem like they were a little tougher for him to make. Because, or you could kind of rally behind Spock when he was saying the rules are what you need to follow here, especially right after this incident where Starfleet Command, a lot of them get attacked, and Kirk's father figure essentially dies, and he wants to just wipe this guy out. But as it turns out, that's not like what he decided to do, because Spock says, no, we should just take this guy in, there's no reason we shouldn't. And that gets him in more trouble later, but it's they try to push the whole what's right and what's right when you follow orders, and you can see there's a struggle between Spock, who's like, you should follow the rules, and Kirk, who says, well, but should the rules be strictly applied to everything? And I think that's a very good struggle to have, and I'm sure that'll continue throughout Star Trek into the next movies and everything, but it's turned up, I think, in this one. Anyway, so they go to this Klingon homeworld, and we get our first view of the Klingons, and they do pretty well with that, though they're not that important in this, really. But anyway, they get Khan, who's going by like some other name, like John Harrison. But they get Khan, they get him above the ship, and you find out that he's some super soldier dude with, and and he's just trying to save his crew of people from dying, and you kind of feel sorry for him, because he basically just says the Admiral is using him to start a war with the Klingons, and he just wants to protect his people, because they're his family essentially, and you feel very, you can understand that goal, because it's a very human and normal goal. The people you're closest to, you wanna protect, and you'll do some very questionable things to do that. And I really don't think I don't think they pushed stuff like that enough in movies and video games and stuff, where you have to make a decision to help people you love, or achieve some goal involving somebody you love or something like that. And if you do that, things happen for it. Or it creates a moral dilemma with the person. There's an internal struggle there. But anyway, aside from that, that'll be another rant in the future. Aside from that, though, so the Admiral ends up coming on, and he tries to be Tommy Lee Jones. I'm going to get this out of the way right now. That Admiral, all he does is try and act like he's Tommy Lee Jones. And it pisses me off the entire movie. Because A, you're just thinking, wow, why can't I just be watching Tommy Lee Jones? Two, it's just not good. I mean, he's not that great in a lot of the parts, I don't think. And especially when the ship gets boarded by Khan, Kirk, and Scotty's already there, but when the ship's boarded by them, it's fucking stupid, because he starts yelling and his inflections are all over the place. He just stops acting, and it's really funny, actually. But anyway, he's a warmongering dick, and Khan, like, they have to go on the ship because their ship's gonna get blown up, and Scotty turned off their weapons and all this. But anyway, they go onto the ship, and you get to see this awesome part, you know, where Kirk's helmet's cracking because they're going through space because they're trying to like shoot themselves through their garbage chute into the ship, and it's awesome. And Khan ends up helping him get in there, and then Khan saves their lives. It's really cool. And so yeah, they get aboard the ship, and you know, I'm paraphrasing a lot here. I'll go back for 1 minute because I don't want to skip. I don't want people to be like, "Where's Khan coming into this?" Khan basically, his blood regenerates people, and so he gives it to this other Starfleet guy whose daughter's dying, so his daughter will be alive. And then this guy goes in and sets off a bomb inside of like this archive at Starfleet because why the fuck not? Yeah, and so he's basically kind of a terrorist in the beginning. You don't really know why. All you know is John Harrison is a bad person. But yeah, so that happens, and that's when the Starfleet captains come in, and then Kirk discovers that, you know, that's where his next target's going to be, because in the event of something like this, protocol mandates they all be in that room. And you know, so, you know, like I said, I'm going to be paraphrasing a lot, so if it seems like I'm skipping over something, it's because I don't want this video to be 4 hours long. Anyway, so they have Harrison aboard their ship, and they end up shooting themselves onto the Admiral's ship because he's going to blow them up, and then a bunch of shit's going to go down. And the reason he's going to do this is because he wants Harrison and he wants to kill him, and Kirk doesn't really want that, especially now that Kirk knows that there are they give him these torpedoes to shoot at John Harrison on the Klingon homeworld, and these torpedoes would have started a war. But the other thing is that all of Harrison's people are in these torpedoes and cryo, and it would have killed them, which is why when they go down to the planet, they get attacked by these Klingons, and Harrison ends up jumping in and saving them and taking out this entire squadron, and then asks them how many missiles they have because Sulu issues this warning to him, and here they say they have like 72, and Harrison just gives up. Yeah, so then, or Khan just gives up. I need to stop saying Harrison. His name's Khan. They keep Harrison a lot in that movie. They keep calling him John Harrison in that, so, you know, forgive me if I say that. But Khan gives up, and yeah, then like I said, they get on the ship, and they get to the command deck where the Admiral is, and they knock Khan out with a stun blaster, and like there's this whole monologue with the captain, and I think this is essentially so they don't get it done too easily. It's one of those things where, you know, the good guy, you know, if he just, you know, kept on a roll and kept doing things and took this guy out, and then they just drug these people into the prison, they probably would have been fine, but it didn't happen. You know, I mean, Colin wakes up pretty quickly because he's super powerful, you know, and basically he ends up knocking a couple people out, or knocking people over, and then he breaks the Admiral's daughter's name, who was aboard the Enterprise. But he knocks her down and breaks her leg, and it's just intense. And then he just crushes the skull of the Admiral. And meanwhile, Spock's on the Enterprise, and he's talking to older Spock about Khan. And older Spock says, "I'm not going to tell you how to do this," but then he just proceeds to do it because Khan's really dangerous. But anyway, so Spock trades his people to Khan's people to him, and then Khan's like, "I'm still gonna blow you guys up," but they armed the warheads on all the cryo things and blow the fuck out of the ship. And then there's the big space battle, you know, where everybody's running around and Khan's falling to Earth, and Spock's like, "Go after him, he survived," and everybody's like, "Okay," and it's really intense, and it's really actiony, and it's but the best moment, I think, in this is when they're trying to get Spock, or not Spock, but Kirk and Scotty are running around trying to get the engine back up because it's been out, like it just died, and Kirk ends up going into this irradiated room by himself, to align these things that'll make them allow to divert engine power to the rest of the ship, because they're falling to Earth and about to die, and he gets irradiated, and Spock ends up going to see him. And this scene, they do the whole human thing, and this also had to do a lot. This movie had a lot to do with Spock's emotions thing, and Spock ends up saying at one point that he chooses not to feel because he feels so strongly, kind of deal, and that's fine and good. Not really a big thing, really. I mean, but anyway, so Kirk's dying, and Spock can't do anything to save him, because if he opens the thing, it'll flood the whole room, and they'll all die. But so Spock's really upset, and I think he even cries a little bit. And this scene would be so much more touching if they didn't establish earlier in the movie twice that Khan's blood will basically resurrect something from the dead. So Spock ends up, they have Kirk on this table, and everybody's sad, and then, Bones figures out that the blood will save him, and Spock is fighting and just fucking Khan up, and just in this fight, and they can't get a hold of him, tell him they need him alive, so Aurora goes down, and she just starts shooting him, and he's just like, fuck yeah, and Khan's just going to go kill her, and then Spock gets this giant wrench and clocks him over the head and just starts double arm pounding him on the floor. It's intense. And then Aurora's like, no, we need his blood to save Kirk. And so Spock's like, oh. And he just uppercuts him, rock'em sock'em robots that motherfucker. They take him to the ship. They jab him. They bring Kirk back. Then there's the monologue, the famous Star Trek monologue, and basically we're gonna get another movie. But like I said, quick synopsis of this film. It's a long motherfucker. It's really good. It is really good. But in this I was trying to get across one of my problems, and I just ended up telling you the whole plot of the movie. But one of my problems with this movie is simply that with the whole Khan and Admiral thing, they don't really establish things. Khan's basically Khan and his people are genocidal. They'll kill anybody they don't deem as worthy. They're Daleks, they're Nazis, they're everything, every really big villain. The Admiral is just a warmongering fuck. So these two people you hate, two of them, not four but two, and you hate them. You're supposed to hate them, and you're supposed to want them dead. Problem is, they don't really establish Khan very well. They spend a lot of time on the Admiral saying he's bad. And with Khan, they do this whole kind of anti-hero thing, where it's Khan's willing to just snap your neck at a moment's notice, but he's doing it to protect his crew, and you can't really fault him for that. And then out of nowhere, after Spock talks to older Spock, out of nowhere, just right out of the shit, he's just like, oh, but you're just gonna start exterminating people because that's what you guys were supposed to do. And you're like, what? If you don't know Star Trek, it's just gonna be like, what the fuck, dude? And I don't know, that personally kind of bugs me. The reason being is because is two reasons. One, you got to establish your villains very well in the beginning. Spider-Man 3 is a great example of how you have too many villains and you don't establish any of them enough for you to really get invested. You got Sandman, Hobgoblin, then you got Peter's personal battles along with Venom at the last 20 minutes. Too fucking much. And you got to establish your villains, you got to establish motives. And with Khan, like I said, if you are somebody that doesn't really know Star Trek, or isn't, just is somebody that's very casually watching this, because you saw the first movie, you liked it, you're seeing this one. What the fuck, man? You're just gonna be like, why is he sudden? Why didn't they bring that up? They would, because Kirk doesn't really trust him. When he gets to the deck, they decide that they wanted to knock him out. So it'd been really more interesting if they found out stuff about Khan earlier, and it's like, oh, so this is what he does. Okay, well, Scotty, this is what he's doing. We should knock him out. Because then we would know, okay, Khan's not good. Khan's doing bad things. You know, instead of him just suddenly being this rampaging dick and you kind of being like, okay, that's out of nowhere, but they did just betray him, and then them being like, no, 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 he's always been evil. I just don't like that. And two, I understand why J.J. Abrams didn't do this, and I can understand why anybody wouldn't want to do this. In fact, me saying it's probably going to piss some Star Trek fans off. But this is just a personal opinion, and doesn't necessarily apply just to Khan. But anyway, hear me out here. When it comes to making an alternate universe in something that is established, you risk pissing fans off by changing things. Yes, and that is understandable why you don't want to do too much. However, the fact that it's an alternate universe gives you free range to kind of toy with things. And while I don't know the old Khan character extremely well, I would like to say that it would be very interesting to see them kind of toy with Khan a little bit, and not necessarily make him good, but not make him just this genocidal maniac, you know? And I think that them being able to, you know, play around with certain aspects of the universe because it's a new universe would be interesting to watch. And if you can stay open-minded, I think that would be really interesting for fans as well, because then you're not getting something you've seen before. You know, there's the familiarity of Star Trek, but there's something new about it too. And I think that would help them, you know, that would kind of either piss the fans who are like, no, you can't reboot Star Trek, it doesn't need to be done. That would either piss them off more, or it would win their hearts over. And like I said, I can understand not wanting to do something like that. It's a risky maneuver, and I totally get it. You know, it's safer to do something like that, to just keep it, you know, to what it is. But my problem when you establish an alternate universe is that you almost have to toy with things that are in the original and make them different, because if you don't, it's not an alternate universe. It's just Star Trek, and you might as well not say anything different. You know, old Spock being there, don't tell me in the first movie that changes something and then you don't change anything. And you know, and I'm sure there are little things that have changed, and that's fine. You know, little things changing is one thing, but but the fact that it's an alternate universe means bigger things should change, you know, and that bugs me that doesn't happen. You know, even in the first movie, I think there was a big change where when Kirk met older Spock, he said, "Oh, Spock's captain," and older Spock was like, "Really?" You know, because that was a big deal. Or maybe I'm wrong, but I just feel like that would have been much more interesting to watch, is to see Khan be a bad guy, but them go the whole 9 yards, and him be a bad guy that you feel something for. You know, it's like, okay, he wants to destroy Starfleet, and he's willing to just do anything, you know, betray people, whatever, to do that because they used him and they threatened his crew, and you know, his mission is to make peace or something like that. And because of that, he wants to destroy Starfleet, because from what he's seen, they're a bunch of warmongering fuckers who don't deserve to, you know, be out there putting their hands in every cookie fucking jar. You know, I mean, it's like, yeah, okay, no, that's not true, but considering what Khan has went through with the Admiral and his people nearly being shot and it exploded, maybe you can understand that a little bit better, you know? As compared to, no, he just wants to wake his people up because he wants to start exterminating races, period. See what I'm getting at? I don't know, maybe you don't. But either way, that's just a couple of my problems. But most of these problems are nitpicks, you know? This movie was really great, and I don't want to scare anybody away with those nitpicks. There were so many things that redeemed it, so many things. The acting in it was good, pretty much all the way through. It was really well paced. The writing in it, I think, was better, And you know, just all around, despite a couple predictable moments here and there, really it kept me entertained. It kept me on the edge of my seat when it was being suspenseful. It was really good. And you know, if you haven't gone out and seen Star Trek Into Darkness, go do it now. It's probably one of the best movies, one of the best summer movies I'm gonna see over the summer. I don't expect much better. So, anyway, that's been me, the Vault Dweller of the Fallout Experiment. Star Trek Into Darkness. 9 out of 10. Solid A. Go see it. Well worth your money. Over and out.